During our language arts virtual class this week, we accomplished the task of creating our argument whether or not dogs should be allowed in restaurants. To do that, we followed this process. So, in our class time, we reviewed last week's assignment. We learned new things, and those new things were the authors and writers' techniques of ethos, logos, and pathos to persuade. We're transitioning from argumentative writing into persuasive writing for the next 3 weeks while we create our own product. Lastly, we watched commercials, and from those commercials, we either completed a pear deck or we completed a KWLT chart by reviewing our thinking about ethos, logos, and pathos. To review our process, we started off in the assignment from last week, which included in our assignment last week to review, we completed what the author is saying. We identified this within this piece of text, 5 keywords that helped us to identify the author's main idea. From there, we went ahead and looked at this big green box with all of these different things that writers do in order to inform the reader. And we identified which one of those items the author was doing the most in this piece of text. We copied and pasted that item from this list over here in this green box. From there, we identified which of the 4 intentions the author was doing in that piece of text. After identifying that, we explained that author's intention, goal, and purpose in a single sentence. This week, we also looked at these two, or sorry, last week, we also looked at these 2 pieces of text and these 2 graphics and answered the question, what information does this graphic communicate about germs in humans? And so keeping in mind this piece of text, this big idea or main idea, and observing these 2 scientific factual pieces of evidence, we began to write our compare and contrast paragraph. Now, this paragraph starts up here using these specific compare and contrast statements and then ends in these red parts, these items that can be found in these 3 boxes to create that contrast. So notice by the time you're completely finished, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences total to create this full paragraph. For many students, that's what they completed during our breakout session today, as well as the new learning. Our new learning involved completing this last slide, slide number 10, and creating an argument. To create an argument, my example is right here. To create an argument, we use these sentence starters. If, then, because, as a result, therefore, and then we give the reader a process. First, then second, then third, then last, and then we finish our entire argument with our claim. So this checklist that's right here on this slide is what we practiced in our uh, breakout room session to create this last paragraph. You'll write that paragraph on slide number 12. The last 20 minutes of our class time was spent learning about ethos, logos, and pathos. To learn about ethos, logos, and pathos, you have 2 options. On the 3.1 assignment page, and also virtual class where you see this video, are 2 options. The first is to complete the pear deck. Some students chose to complete the pear deck. Other students chose to do the KWLT chart. I'll give you an example of the thinking that goes into both assignments. First, the pear deck. The pear deck has 14 slides. In those 14 slides, you are reading to create an argument. Remember, ethos, logos, and pathos are brand new learning, and so we're just practicing those in this pear deck. To practice that new learning, we got an introduction or overview of how this matches what the author is doing. We've been practicing what the author's doing, what the author's saying. Now we're going to lean into the author's techniques. One of those techniques that we're going to focus on is rhetorical appeals. We learn the definition of a rhetorical appeals and how it leverages the intended audience and how it often depends on the intended audience. Within this week's module, you got the opportunity to look at different products that were product fails, where the intended audience didn't purchase the item, or maybe the intended audience was never thought of, and so that's why it failed. In this process that we practice in class, we identify the audience and then we think like the intended audience to determine if the argument is effective. In 2 weeks, you're going to be planning your own invention. And so we chatted about that a little bit in today's virtual class and what those expectations will be in 2 weeks. We want to bear in mind that these writing techniques are used for persuasion. And so we needed to go to the experts for examples. We went through these 3 definitions of ethos, pathos, and logos. From there, we watched this video that gives you the information. Should you choose the Pear Deck, all of these resources are available to you. We watched this commercial and identified the intended audience, but in the question, we answered, how does the author prove the intended audience can trust the information? We'll be using these 3 icons throughout learning about ethos, logos, and pathos. The check mark is used for ethos. The heart is used for emotions, thoughts, or feelings. And then the light bulb is used for for logic, facts, and details. So we went through each one of these slides, identifying and watching each commercial. By the time we were finished, we identified the author's techniques in all of the commercials, and then responded to this question by watching this last commercial. Should you choose to complete the Pear Deck, I will know, but you complete the Pear Deck just by submitting it. And you don't have to submit anything. All you have to do is complete the Pear Deck. I have a list of students who complete the Pear Deck. Next is the KWLT chart. The second option to show your learning in virtual class today, aside from the Pear Deck, is to complete the KWLT chart. Some students chose this one because they wanted to get the entire lesson first and then go back and solidify their thinking based on what they know about the 3 different rhetorical devices, ethos, logos, and pathos, what they want to know, and then what they learned. Most importantly, they wanted to identify what they want to tell others about the fact that they're learning this rhetorical device called ethos, logos, and pathos. Should you choose this as your option, wait for the entire lesson to be finished and then go back and fill in this chart. Again, you have the option to either complete the Pear Deck, where you don't have to submit anything. I'll have a list of students who completed the Pear Deck, or you can complete this chart at the end of the lesson today.